In a world where chaos reigns, the devastation is relentless. The victims keep piling up. Officials are dismissed, families are torn apart, and the war has finally ended, yet the pain remains. It's as if the entire nation is quietly dying. Once, Vladimir Putin threatened to freeze Europe with a single move, warning that Russian energy would hold the world hostage, quipping, "You will freeze without Russian gas." But now, the shocking truth emerges: it is Putin's own people suffering the coldest winter they've ever known. Imagine shivering under multiple blankets, the freezing air biting through the thin fabric. The cold is so intense that even the most resilient are forced to endure it. What options remain? Only patience. The Russian people have become masters of silent suffering. These heartbreaking words come from residents of Angarsk, Siberia's industrial core, where desperation is etched on their faces. Meanwhile, across the other side of the country, images from Crimea tell a different story. When Putin annexed the peninsula, he promised prosperity and safety. Today, those promises lie shattered. Now, millions of Crimeans are stranded on roads, their homes cold and dark, their lives paused in a frozen nightmare. This is Russia in 2025, a nation teetering on the brink. Behind closed doors, funds meant for social welfare have been redirected to sustain the war effort. This reckless maneuver pushes the country toward total collapse. One of its many frontlines is the industrial city of Saryv, deep in Sverdlovsk Oblast. A single malfunction in the city's main boiler plant triggered a catastrophic domino effect. Over 16,800 residents, including hospitals and schools, suddenly found themselves without heat at an unbearable -40 degrees. With no options left, Mayor Vasily Sizakov had to declare a state of emergency. In another part of the same region, the nightmare persisted. According to official reports, more than 85,000 people were left freezing after an accident at a combined heat and power station. Temperatures plunged to -18. But the tragedy deepened further in Angarsk, Irkutsk's city of resilience. Usually accustomed to brutal winters, this year's disaster was not due to nature but sheer neglect. In early December, a massive failure at the aging thermal plant, built during the Soviet era, caused it to collapse from metal fatigue. Nearly 167,000 civilians were left in the cold, in temperatures as low as -30 degrees. Imagine the silence, the whispered crunch of snow underfoot, the howling wind piercing through thin windows, and the desperate scramble for warmth. With the heating gone, families tried to comfort their children with hot water bottles, but the cold seeped into bones. The century-old power plant in Angarsk and the half-century-old pipes in Saryv lay in ruins, silent witnesses to a long-forgotten era. While leaders boasted of hypersonic missile development, they failed to replace leaking pipes that now burst under the weight of war and neglect. Meanwhile, in the Sakha Republic, the Earth's coldest inhabited place, things are no better. Record lows of -50 degrees Celsius hang heavy in the air. Infrastructure has all but collapsed. Natural gas is scarce, heating systems are broken, and coal has become a luxury. The regional budget deficit skyrockets to 24.4 billion rubles. But numbers tell only part of the story. Children remain out of school, the elderly freeze, hospitals shut down. Local officials openly admit, only a fraction of the funds necessary to sustain the energy system have arrived. The rest are diverted toward producing weapons and upgrading military technology. The region's rich resources, diamonds, gold, uranium, bring wealth to the country, yet the local population bears the brunt of neglect. In villages like Tiksi, infrastructure has vanished. Water pipes freeze, sewage systems crumble, and schools shut their doors. Leaders propose drastic measures, closing cultural centers, sports halls, and even freezing public life altogether. The future is slipping away. The crisis extends beyond energy. The entire logistics network in the east, especially along the vital Trans-Siberian corridor, is disintegrating. Miles of traffic jams stretch over the snowy plains, trucks and military vehicles stranded under the weight of snow. With mobilization removing thousands of workers from local roads, snow removal teams operate at half capacity. As a result, vital supplies, fuel, medicine, and military equipment are stuck beneath mountains of snow for days on end. The once reliable arteries that kept the entire country moving are clogged, and the fallouts extend far beyond inconvenience. These delays threaten military operations. crucial supplies, and the very survival of the nation itself. In this frozen chaos, a stark truth emerges: the smiling face of progress has been replaced by a brutal reality of systemic failure, neglect, and shattered promises. The most basic human needs, warmth, safety, hope, are now distant memories in a country that once prided itself on strength. All because the priorities shifted, funds flowing into weapons rather than homes, while the people are left to freeze in silence. The situation in Russia has spiraled into a catastrophic crisis, and the truth is chilling. Imagine a city of hundreds of thousands plunged into darkness and freezing despair. A deadly silence fills the air, no heater, no warmth, just the relentless cold seeping into bones. How could a country so rich in resources let its people suffer like this? The answer lies in neglect that reaches deep into the core of a collapsing regime. In early December, disaster struck at the CHPP-9 thermal power plant in Angarsk. This facility, built during Soviet times, was 62 years old. Metal fatigue finally claimed it. The result? Nearly 167,000 residents lost their heat in bitter temperatures, dropping to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Can you imagine the freezing chill creeping through the walls? Children shivering under thin blankets, desperate for warmth. Meanwhile, the government warns, don't use electric heaters. The grid will overload. But what choice do desperate families have? They clutch hot water bottles, trying to stave off the deadly cold. This isn't an isolated incident. The pipes in Saryv, only half a century old, have burst under pressure. Russia's infrastructure, left untouched since the Brezhnev years. While Putin boasts about hypersonic missiles, his own people's pipes crumble. These critical arteries of energy are bursting under the weight of a war economy paid for with neglect. Imagine the smell of burnt metal, the clang of collapsing pipes, and the icy bite of the winter air filling the void where warmth once thrived. Now, consider the vast expanse of the Sakha Republic, home to some of the country's richest mineral deposits and yet cursed with some of the coldest temperatures on Earth. In regions where thermometers plunge to minus 50 degrees Celsius, natural gas supplies vanish. Central heating? Broken. Coal? Nearly unaffordable. The regional budget deficit has soared to 24.4 billion rubles. For every number, there's a human story: children missing school, elderly people turning to despair, hospitals unable to provide basic care. As Regional Deputy Viktor Fyodorov grimly notes, we need 63 billion rubles just to sustain the energy system. Moscow has only given us 34 billion. The gap isn't just financial, it's a death sentence for many. Sakha is a treasure trove of diamonds, gold, uranium, and rare earth elements, resources that rake in billions yearly. But now, even the funds to buy coal are absent. It's a paradox: riches fueled by exploitation, yet the people live in freezing darkness. Villages like Tixi face a harsh reality: water pipes burst, sewage systems collapse, and schools close because heating plants fail. The air is thick with the scent of ash and despair, as infrastructure crumbles under years of neglect. Even local officials acknowledge the crisis. Rostim Dalanov, among them, suggests a shocking solution: let's not heat the cultural centers or sports halls. Let's save money. What does this mean? The very fabric of society is being frozen in place. Regions like Verkhnekholmsky suffer most. Entire streets are dark, water frozen in pipes, streets coated in ice. Children go to bed cold, hospitals struggle to stay open. The last reserves of coal run dry, the infrastructure is paralyzed. They call this a technical bankruptcy, a deliberate system collapse. The silence is deafening: no money, no repairs, only desperation. The government's neglect turns into a silent, deadly threat, an unfolding tragedy unfolding in the shadows of a broken empire. How much longer can this frozen nightmare last before the last embers of hope go out? The Kremlin's priorities are clear. Rich mining territories like Sakha, known for diamonds, gold, uranium, and rare earth elements, are suffering. These lands generate billions in revenue, yet they can't even afford coal to heat homes. This isn't a contradiction, but a deliberate choice. The chaos unleashed by this neglect is exposing the true face of power. Villages such as Tixi stand as living proof. Entire communities are frozen in time. Water pipes have burst open, sewage systems have collapsed under the weight of neglect. Schools in the Verkhnekholmsky region have shut down completely because the heating systems are broken. In Kobayisky, boiler rooms have been shut due to unpaid bills. People are forced to spend almost every hour in thick coats, gloves tightly pressed against their bodies, hats shielding them from the biting cold. Amid this chaos, local officials offer words that sting with their callousness. Administrator Rostim Dalanov suggested, "Let's not heat cultural centers or sports facilities, we need to save money." The message is clear: cut culture, halt sports, freeze public life. They are essentially proposing to shut down the state itself, allowing entire communities to suffer in silence. The near-permanent freezing of the republic's future is taking a toll. Local leaders admit they cannot pay coal companies or transporters. Debt has piled up like snowdrifts. State-owned enterprises are unable to pay salaries. Transportation networks grind to a halt. Some regions have exhausted their last reserves of coal altogether. Even officials at the highest levels of energy admit that they have no funds. Only half of the 63 billion rubles needed for critical infrastructure has been allocated. The rest is diverted to missile projects, leaving basic needs unmet. Western sanctions have strangled supply chains. Critical parts, turbines, high-pressure valves, are now inaccessible, making temporary repairs impossible. Meanwhile, heavy snowfall blankets the region, and the lack of proper snow removal crews leaves roads clogged. Emergency fuel tankers are stranded, awaiting rescue for days on end. But this is not confined to Siberia. The problems have seeped into Crimea, a jewel in Putin's crown, exposing the deep flaws of neglect and mismanagement. A fierce snowstorm hit the peninsula, revealing how unprepared the authorities truly are. Within hours, a month's worth of rain fell, turning streets into rivers. Major roads, like the Sevastopol Highway, shut down. Transportation in Yalta ground to a halt. 17,000 residents faced power outages, darkness, cold, despair. Why did this happen? Because the administration prioritized military expansion over infrastructure. While they built hypersonic missiles, they ignored the basic needs of their people, continuously sacrificing the survival of everyday life for the illusion of power. That illusion is now crumbling, revealing a society on the brink of collapse. The tragic irony is deafening. A nation built on promises of warmth and prosperity now faces the freezing abyss of neglect. The social contract has shattered, trust melted away like ice under the sun. The people wonder, how much longer can they endure? And behind the scenes, the machinery of war and the crumbling infrastructure threaten to pull the entire country into chaos, unless change comes soon. A fierce snowstorm struck Crimea, revealing the shocking unpreparedness at the heart of Russia's leadership. In just 1 hour, a month's worth of rain poured down, transforming the lush landscape into a treacherous, icy nightmare. Roads crumbled under the weight of mud and water. The main highway connecting Simferopol to Sevastopol was shut down. Within Yalta, transportation halted entirely. Thousands of residents, totaling 17,000, found themselves plunged into darkness, their homes cold and powerless. How could such chaos unfold so suddenly? The reason is clear: instead of investing in reliable infrastructure, the authorities prioritized turning Crimea into a sprawling military fortress, neglecting essential services. For years, the government had spun a comforting tale that Russia's forces brought order, stability, and prosperity. Yet what the people experienced in that moment was chaos, dark, freezing, and terrifying. This was no mere technical malfunction, it was the collapse of the fragile social contract that holds Russia together. For decades, the Kremlin had promised comfort in return for silence. "Keep your mouth shut," it said, "and we'll keep you warm, fed, and secure." But in the coldest moments, that promise vanished. The fundamental promise, warmth, disappeared into nothingness. What many believed to be a simple infrastructure failure revealed a much deeper systemic collapse. Cities like Angarsk, Saryv, and Bratsk began to see their heating systems fail one after another. Municipal officials urged residents to stay inside, bundled up in coats, trying to accept the cold. But panic took hold. People rushed to buy electric heaters, flooding the grid with demand it couldn't handle. Transformers fizzled and exploded, darkening entire neighborhoods for days. This was only the start. Electrical outages led to water pumps shutting down, pipes freezing solid, sewage lines burst under the pressure. Drinking water became a scarce commodity. The failure spread like wildfire, neighborhood after neighborhood, district after district, an unstoppable domino effect. What began as a cold snap turned into a social crisis, people's trust in their government shattered by the bitter reality. Throughout history, Russians have endured hunger, oppression, and mobilization. But now, if a mother cannot protect her child from the deadly cold, or a sick person cannot recover in a warm room, faith in the state crumbles. This is the new nightmare, the coldest proof of a nation on the brink of systemic collapse. In the depths of Russia's frozen wastelands, the cruel truth unfolds: trust in the state is melting away faster than the snow. But beneath this chilling facade lies a shocking paradox. While soldiers are sent to defend the nation, the very same armed forces are hollowing out the heart of the country's neglected regions. These provinces, home to high ethnic minority populations, are the real battleground. In Siberia, Yakutia, and the Far East, the government shuffles young men into the war effort, voluntarily or by force, while vital public services crumble around them. The local infrastructure? It's freezing solid. Schools shut down, hospitals go dark, and basic heat disappears. Yet, funds meant for community upkeep are diverted to weapon factories, missiles and military hardware, leaving local needs to rot. Can a young man from Yakutia, facing -50°C, see any hope? Many see enlistment as the only escape, a chance to break free from despair born of neglect and broken promises. But instead, they become expendable pawns, sent into the heart of the chaos with little regard for their safety. They're fighting not only a war abroad but also a battle for survival at home, neglected and discarded. The military's logistics fail where it matters most. The East-West Highway, Russia's arterial route, turns into a colossal parking lot, 100 kilometers of stranded vehicles. Why? Because mobilization drained the snow removal crews. Officials drafted municipal workers into the army, migrant workers fled for safety, leaving the snow to pile up. The cost of salt and shovels? Unaffordable in a country where regional budgets are drained and coffers dry. Result? Roads become impassable, and vital supplies, fuel, medicine, military aid, are stuck beneath crushing snow. This is not just about cold, it's about a nation unraveling from within, where strategic failure has become the harshest winter. Every frozen pipe, every halted convoy, reveals the sickening truth: Russia's energy superpower image is a mirage. Behind the scenes, the infrastructure that sustains life is collapsing, an unseen catastrophe that threatens to bring the entire empire to its knees. What will it take for this frozen nightmare to thaw? Or has the bitter cold already claimed what was once a proud nation's promise? Russia's infrastructure is crumbling, and the consequences are horrifying. Imagine freezing in your own home, pipes bursting under the weight of neglect, and the cold seeping into your bones. The government's refusal to modernize heating systems has turned entire cities into icy wastelands. Now, military supplies are stranded in these frozen chaos zones, and the nation's strategic strength is unraveling before our eyes. Recent years revealed a shocking truth: Russia's energy dominance is collapsing. For decades, natural gas and oil powered the Kremlin's political influence over Europe. Russia depended on this leverage, using pipelines as a weapon. But since the Ukraine conflict, that leverage is vanishing. Exports to Europe have plummeted by 70 to 80%. European nations are rapidly reducing dependence, building renewable sources, and diversifying supplies. Moscow now faces a brutal reality: energy exports are no longer a reliable tool of coercion. The bloc's strategic plan, Repower EU, accelerates investments in green energy and alternative pipelines. This relentless shift reduces Russia's influence and forces it to reconsider its long-standing claims. Meanwhile, Turkey's energy policies are shifting dramatically, no longer just a regional player but a pivotal hub in a new, uncertain energy map. As pipelines grow silent, the once mighty energy superpower's foundation cracks. What will happen when the world no longer needs Russia's gas? Could this be the start of a new geopolitical era? The answer remains shrouded in icy darkness. As the Russian infrastructure decays and the cold grip of failure worsens, only time will tell how far this collapse will go, and what it will leave behind. The global energy landscape is shifting in unexpected ways. Russia's once dominant role as a gas supplier is eroding. New pipelines and alternative sources are redefining influence across the continent. But what does this mean for Moscow's strategic power? Surprisingly, the tide is turning against the very country that once wielded energy as a weapon. Projects like TANAP and Turkstream are transforming regional energy corridors. Their purpose isn't just to supply Turkey and Europe, but to weaken Russia's grip. By diversifying supply routes, Europe is slowly cutting Moscow out of its energy equations. The once unchallenged Moscow-controlled Druzhba pipeline, running since the Cold War, now faces hostile attacks and political sabotage. Poland has declared it a military target. Ukraine's active resistance has made segments of the pipeline inoperable during conflicts. What used to be a seamless fuel highway now stands fractured and unreliable. This escalation shows that energy infrastructure is no longer just about economics. It's a battlefield. Every attack, every supply chain disruption reveals a new front in geopolitics. Russia's doctrine of energy supremacy, promising global influence, has crumbled. While Moscow profited from exports, it failed to maintain political dominance. As European nations built strategic reserves and expanded liquefied natural gas facilities, Russia's leverage declined. The once mighty superpower's energy monopoly is slipping away, replaced by a patchwork of new players like Turkey and Azerbaijan. The consequences are chilling. Russian gas, once a tool of coercion, is losing its power to intimidate. Instead, it becomes a symbol of Moscow's diminishing influence. How long can Russia cling to this illusion before it collapses entirely? The game has changed. Energy dependence no longer favors the old empire. It's a new era, where Moscow's strategic claims are unraveling amidst a landscape of diversification and resilience. The question remains, will Russia find a way to adapt or fade into history? In a world spiraling into chaos, Russia finds itself on the brink of collapse. Its own population battles freezing temperatures, with homes plunged into darkness and hope flickering like dying candles. Meanwhile, Putin's plans for geopolitical dominance are unraveling faster than anyone imagined. Can the mighty bear survive when its identity is reduced to icy despair? The truth is shocking. The empire's strength depends not on missiles, but on the resilience of its people, yet now, even that resilience is cracking under the weight of systemic failure. The connection between energy policies, domestic stability, and global influence has never been more fragile. As Russia exports its resources to distant markets like Kazakhstan and China, it sacrifices its own people's safety for profit. Regions such as Tatarstan and Sakha are crying out in desperation, voicing fears of resource shortages and losing control for Moscow. The once formidable federal system is buckling, revealing signs of a looming disaster. Fading fires across the expansive steppes are not signs of warmth, but warnings of collapse. Putin's grand ambitions have backfired spectacularly. Instead of consolidating power, he has condemned millions to endure brutal cold, left alone against an unyielding winter. His plan to dominate Ukraine and Project Strength has now plunged Russia into chaos. The very mind that sought to dominate the world is now powerless against a furious, frozen populace. As the streets lie in silence, the lights go out one by one. The shadows of despair stretch over every city, every village. The nation stands at a crossroads. Will it endure, or will the darkness swallow it whole? The clock is ticking. The once mighty empire now shivers, its future hidden beneath a shroud of cold. No fortress is safe. No victory can be claimed when the people are frozen in fear and despair. This is not just a story of infrastructure failure, it's a warning. A warning that a system built on greed and neglect is crumbling from within. Are we witnessing the end of an era? Can hope ignite amidst the ice? Or is this the dawn of a new, uncertain chapter? The answer lies beneath the frozen surface of what once was a sprawling empire. Stay alert, because the true story of Russia's downfall is yet to be told.